right. Well, I just want to say thank you for joining our Courageous Conversation. This is a project of the Girl Child Long Walk Project. The Girl Child Long Walk Project is a project of Imago Dei Fund. It was co-founded by Emily Nielsen-Jones and by Reverend Dr. Dominic Mizzolo. And we work at the intersection of faith, gender equality, and community-led development. We started these conversations because we felt like we needed a space where we could discuss things that very often are not addressed, and especially in that intersectional space. So thank you for joining us. We will make the recording available, and we will also sort of like share it on our website, on our Herb and everything else. So just in terms of housekeeping, please keep yourself on mute. Feel free to put comments and questions in the chat. If you would like to learn more about a program and events, please join the Girl Child Long Walk Hub. Thank you very much. Emily, would you like to lead us to a moment of reflection since you're here?
It's very loud where I am. My apologies.
Oh, it is very loud.
Let me just say I'm so excited for this conversation and getting to hear more of your stories. We have 3 amazing fellows that Marie Rose is going to introduce that are going to share more of their stories. And let me just, one of my quotes that I often have on my mind and heart in these conversations is, we're all walking each other home, by Ram Dass. And in all of your stories of, crossing borders, I think we feel our shared existential journey as a human family, to live together as one family in peace. So look forward to this amazing conversation.
Thank you, Emily. So why don't I set the stage and talk about sort of like migration? We are at a time of unprecedented migration right now. Even though, as Leslye, one of our panelists and fellows, has said during our planning meeting, migration is very much a part of human beings' history and experience. For as long as we know, and history from prehistory to today's times, people have been migrating. According to the UN, there has been a shifting trend over the last 10 years. The number of international migrants reached 281 million in 2019, an increase of 60 million since 2010. Another statistic that really should be mentioned, especially as one of our panelists, Thien-Nhien, came to the US as a child refugee. About half of the world's refugees are children under the age of 18 years old. Last but not least, about 184 million people, 2.3% of the world's population, live outside of their country of nationality. Our panelists are part of this group, and frankly, I should say, so am I. I was born and raised in Haiti, went to study in the US, and recently moved to France. Someone called me a nomad, but I would say this has been a very interesting global experience. We live in an increasingly complex world, and the solutions to the problems we face often require people who have cross-cultural experience and people who can help to break down silos to build bridges that can help to create a more inclusive, multicultural work and hopefully more peaceful. So right now I would like to introduce the panelists, and we have Juliana Avila. Juliana currently lives in Wolfsburg, Germany. She's originally from Brazil. She's a founder of Aquarela, an organization led by immigrant women to support and empower migrants. Thien-Nhien Luong lives in San Jose, California. She's originally from Vietnam. She's the president of Vietnamese American non-governmental organization, Vango Network, which addresses rising needs due to climate change and political instabilities through community participatory processes. Leslye Obiora, Dr. Leslye Obiora, he currently lives in Tucson, Arizona. She's originally from Nigeria. She's a convener and someone whose vision is to positively impact political and business leadership to improve civil society and encourage sustainable business practices. Welcome, every one of you. Thank you so much for joining us, and thank you in advance for sharing your stories. At a time where people seem to be, and countries and governments seem to be very negative about immigrants, migrants, refugees, and asylum seekers, it is essential for us to hear about what migrants, immigrants, refugees can do and are doing and have been doing for the world. Now, Thien-Nhien, thank you for being here. And you, as we discussed, are going to start, and thank you in advance for sharing your stories.
You're very welcome. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for having me on the panel, and it is my pleasure to be with you all this morning. This is a very important conversations to share with each other given the crisis of displaced people in the world today. And as a refugee who arrived to America's shores more than 40 years ago, I feel like this is a critical point to talk about it because, you know, I've seen a lot less compassion and sympathy toward refugee and immigrants in recent years. California, my state of residence, is the 5th largest economy in the world. It is going or moving up to be possibly the 4th largest economy in the world, given the data that's been shared recently. My family and I have made the Bay Area our home. North of where I live is, you know, Silicon Valley with big tech companies, and especially the Magnificent Seven. I don't know if you know what that means, but it pretty much the big 7 company that carry the weight of the S&P 500. And they include Google, Facebook, NVIDIA, Apple, Tesla, and also Microsoft and Amazon. And south of where I live, our vast agricultural land spreading from orchards in Morgan Hill all the way to Central Valley with fields of fruits and crops being harvested by immigrants. So I feel like today my story is a teeny thread of thread weaving into a much larger tapestry of immigrants contributing to the state and this nation. Having shared those facts of California, an immigrant state, 27% of our populations are foreign-born, which mean immigrants. And of the prime working age between 25 and 54 years old, 54% of that population are also immigrants. I live in Santa Clara County, and 40% of our populations are foreign-born. But my journey as Vietnamese American now or immigrants 40 years ago was anything but easy. We escaped to seek for freedom, to be free from oppression and persecution. And I was born in Dalat, a city in highland of central Vietnam. I recalled when I was little, my playground was behind sandbag that stacked up and soldier guarding the gates of our home. My parent was never around. My dad was in the army, and my mom was working in the obstetric hospital pretty much around the clock. And then I think, the normalcy is within the aspect that, we have a life, we have each other, we have meals at the table, but we definitely was not free in the context of roaming around, especially months or a year and months leading to the fall of Vietnam. So right before the fall of Saigon in April 1975, we temporarily moved to Saigon, now known as Ho Chi Minh City, to be with larger extended families to pretty much to face the end of the war itself and face whatever that might come as we were losing the country. There, I pretty much witnessed my father as well as other male figures, relatives being taken away by the invaded forces, the soldiers. And that was pretty scary. Before that, I've heard story of people being executed right before family members. And so that was really scary. I was wondering what gonna be happen to my father and would he ever return to us. So soon after my dad being taken away, and the country was completely fell to the invading force from the north, we returned to our hometown because there was no other opportunity to escape. And we returned to wait for my father pretty much. And because my mom was a midwife and she had the skill set that the hospital needed her, and many educated healthcare workers, lawyers, you name it, had their mean and escaped. So given her skill set and the hospital needed her, we were not sent to new economic zones. And these are pretty much jungles. They just send, family and children into the jungle with no means, no tool whatsoever to apply to us to expand, the city, community, and whatnot. And many family and children die in that context, of starvation, contracting diseases and whatnot. But we were lucky. We were allowed, we were spared, we were allowed to stay. And my mother was a single mother, raised 6 of us and provided us the education that we were allowed with access to. So there was pretty much rules and regulations fenced us in of all kinds of opportunities. To make it the story short, when my father was released in 1983, he was imprisoned, put in the re-education camp. That was far from where we lived. We didn't get to see him that often. I think of the time he was in the re-education camp, I was the lucky one. I got to see him about 2 times, but the rest of my siblings, barely had a chance to see him. So when he was released, between my brothers was denied of higher education, and my father was ostracized from entering Dalat. My brothers then joined my father to live in a small coastal town, Phước Lộc, as fishermen. And this was the plan to have a scam to bring all the males out of Vietnam, crossing the border, vượt biên. For the longest time, I didn't know what vượt biên means, but it pretty much means crossing the border. So soon after that, my mother moved the rest of us to Ho Chi Minh City. Back then, it's known as Saigon, to live with our uncle. And then one day in the summer of 1983, after finishing, pretty much just concluding of the end of the school year, 8th grade, we were told that we need to get ready for vượt biên, crossing the border. And I was a little bit shocked because I sort of remember that many of the male relatives and including my dad said, this trip is very much for the remaining male relatives in the family to escape and vượt biên. But we listened. Well, what could we do? I had little knowledge of or imagination what vượt biên would entail or look like or could be. Then I remember my older sister by 1 year, and I was bused into a small coastal town, and then we lived there as sister for 3 years. No, actually, not 3 years, roughly 3 months in this tiny fat hutch with dirt floor and in a very small community next to a church. And what comforted me the most was hearing all the sisters praying and singing every night. And after, I think the plan was for us to acclimate it enough to the coastal town, to the people there, so that when we actually escaped, we were like a local doing things instead, being so stand out as, city folks, in rural coastal town. And one day we were instructed to follow some strangers on the bus, then walking and then crossing so many sand dunes, really hot sand dunes with nothing but the clothes on our back, to reach this tiny hut that was storing wood to shelter us. We didn't know what was going on. We just followed people. And on that same night in the dark, we would somehow follow again strangers to reach this tiny wooden boat. And when I look at the boat, it shattered my imagination. I had this idea of, being escaping, going to America. I would board this ship, it's, of anything else, it would be like a cruise-like ship. So I was in my best clothes, in light blue dress with a pair of white sandals. So my escape from Vietnam as a young girl, and that story struck the mind of an artist named Thien-Nhien, who recreated, the story as an artwork. And part of my refugee story is typed and faintly visibly typed on the fabric. And it is being exhibited right now in the city of San Jose. The dress itself had really big hem. And I remember in that big hem, we used to smuggle sand, rice, and seed to bring to my dad. Being being a refugee, immigrant, and Vietnamese American, that's who I am. This facet of being defined who I am as a person and charted my course of profession and in the field of public health, humanitarian, and development work. Therefore, in the context of our conversation today, I have built bridges near and far. I felt indebted to, America in some context, but I also feel great responsibility of paying forward, of doing good, in a way, sort of making up for the childhood that I endure. I don't want to see other girls, other families having to go through what I went through. So allow me to sort of share my experience in that separate of three beings. Having lived the experience of persecution and after-war starvation, I remember when I see the image of the girl child long walk with the bucket, I was busting into tears because, pretty much after war, when I was 6 and 7, I was like that girl. There was no water, running water, food was rationed, and I was the one that traveled far away to bring home water to use. And for the longest time, I thought I was an orphan adopted by my family member. When I came to America, I finally asked my parents, I asked, by any chance, you guys adopted me. How come my life has always been so difficult with a lot of struggle? And they yell at me, are you crazy? They said that my generation, every girl, is like me. I'm like, really? It didn't feel like that, but I was just happy that I was able to just blurt it out and ask for validation. Anyhow, I started in my early years of college. I worked on homelessness issues. I assisted community-based organizations around my university to work on immigrant issues. Later, I co-founded nonprofits to collaborate, work with rural poor community in Vietnam on economic development. In the last 10 years, I work with the Angel Network, and we are pretty much all women, all pretty much Vietnamese American immigrants, refugee women, and I love that work. We because of the lived experience, we bring what we could offer to prevent the sort of sufferings that we gone through, and we all felt great responsibilities. I am one of the youngest of the board of 7 people. We have other board member in their 60s, 70s, approaching 80 that is still working for refugees and immigrants. So I love that work very much. And as that of refugees, living in 3 different refugee camps, I have vivid memories of what it was like being a refugee, not just in the camp in Malaysia and in the Philippines, but also in the US, where as immigrants, we face so much prejudices in our early years. These experiences by no means, hardened me. It built my character, it made me strong. And I pretty much said, okay, instead of setting out to be studying a doctor, I was the first generation of AmeriCorps. I don't know if you know about AmeriCorps. It's an equivalent of, Peace Corps, but it's AmeriCorps in 1993, working to resettle Amerasians. Amerasians are children of U.S. soldiers who were arriving to the USA shore in the early 90s after the Congress passed the Homecoming Act in 86, so that they can be uniting with their fathers. Then I worked with a nonprofit organization called Aid to Refugee Children Without Parents. And this agency work with minors, just like what you said, Mary Rose. There were so many minors without parents escaping as refugees. So we were assisting them to resettle in the US. And then we, with the co-founder of that organization, we co-founded Friends of Prey Foundation. And our mission was to work with different refugee camps that were assisted in the 90s, where there was population of Vietnamese who were rejected to be resettled. So that way they can have a place, a center, assist them in the repatriation process in the late 90s. And then somehow, when the fall of Kabul in August of 2021, I was catapulted into the whole rescue mission. All of us, among friends, we just felt compelled to do something about it. And so we came together, and the Viet for Afghan initiative was conceived. And our idea was somehow we can get 75 Vietnamese committing to help Afghan refugees. And 75, again, has personal significance for Vietnamese because the country fell on April 30th, 75. And just like that, we raised funds, roughly about 3,000 each, to sponsor Afghans, refugee from, at the time they were evacuated into different military camps around the world already. And we put together a network of family and friends pretty much up and down the West Coast to provide funding, provide legal, and everything between housing, educational resources to resettle Afghanistan refugees through private sponsorships. And because of that experience, we were invited to testify, work with the Biden administration to launch the Welcome Courts earlier this year. And that is in full implementation, allowing the Welcome US sponsoring refugees and Welcome Connect to allow private, American citizens to sponsor immigrants from around the world. And then we pretty much exhaust ourselves within a year of doing this work, all volunteer based. And so we thought of another way to do this is supporting, Afghan American-led organization that into advocacy and outreach for Afghan refugees. So we've been raising money and giving them grants to do that work themselves more effective. And again, it's about, cultural and linguistic appropriate services. And we just had no capacity to do that. We were able to do that for 1 year, but it was just too difficult. And then there is a part of me of being American, Vietnamese American. With training, education experiences in public health, and this work I love because it's allowed me to be a bridge with the community here, the minority communities, the ethnic communities, where health disparities have been alarming, I did a lot of work in cancer disparities, especially breast cancer, cervical cancer, all sorts of cancers that was predominant among Asian American immigrant population and also Hispanic. I also worked with county, regional, and federal agency to enhance our capacity right after 9/11, and the funding from the federal was pretty much for 10 years, right? So the bridge is not just about building our capacity, but communicate that response capacity, to the ethnic communities, so that they are aware too, what the point of building this robust, more enhanced emergency response to literally we're looking at, kind of weapon of mass destruction type of thing, chemical and biological welfare. And that in itself, allow, me to build more bridges, educating of immigrant and refugee community about the systems that can help them in that context. And that system was put into place, during COVID time. And I also had prominent position working with the ethnic community during COVID time to be able to build bridges and see the impact. It's been quite satisfying, but the work never ends. As you said, Mary Rose, there are still so many millions of displaced people around the world with the intense, political conflicts and climate change and you name it. And I feel that, whether we are U.S. citizen, we are global citizen of the U.S., it is very much our responsibility to do what I can and be part of the solution. So in that capacity of being a refugee, having lived that experience, immigrant and Vietnamese American, I've never short of projects or causes to compel me to work with other people. So with that, I like to conclude and thank you for listening to me.
Thien-Nhien, I'm not sure to thank you for sharing your experience. I mean, we planned and we created this session together and you caught me by surprise. And thank you so much. I feel privileged. And thank you. Now, we have just heard Thien-Nhien's story. And at this stage, and it was 40 years ago, and I could hear in your voice, Thien-Nhien, that some of it you were reliving, and it was as if it were today. And that's always part of the journey. Sometimes the past comes back. Juliana, you have a different experience as an immigrant. It's a very recent experience. You came from Brazil. Can you tell us about your experience and how you feel and what you're doing? Thank you.
Sure. So, hi everyone. Good morning, good afternoon for those here in Europe. Well, first of all, thank you very much for inviting me to be a part of this courageous conversation. Gender and migration are my fields of study, and therefore I'm very happy to join you today and talk about these themes that are so important to me. Well, I think I should introduce myself briefly. My name is Juliana Avila, as Mary Rose has already said, and I was born and raised in Brazil, which is a country mainly composed by migrants from many different countries. Not only Portugal or African countries, but also many other countries in Europe and Asia. As a curiosity, Brazil has the biggest Japanese community outside Japan. Not many people know that. Well, but not only. There are many other large communities in Brazil, such as from Spain, Italy, Germany, Poland, other Asian countries. Well, my family roots are mainly Spanish and Italian. I'm even an Italian citizen due to my mother's family background, and I'm also a migrant myself. I have been living in Germany for the past 8 years, almost 9 already. And well, before I tell you a bit more about my migration process, I would like to make 3 comments that I think may be interesting and also enlightening to this conversation. The first is that when we add the gender variant to migration, we realized that at the very beginning, migration was an exclusively male process. Only men would migrate, leaving their homes behind to go for food and support for their family. Later on, they began to take their wives and children with them, but women played a secondary role. They were not the decision makers. They were just like an accessory going together. It was only from 1960s and 1970s that women began to migrate on their own. It was when they became the protagonists of their migration process. And the great curiosity is that women's migration flows surpassed those of men. There are more women making the decision to migrate than men. And from a gender perspective, this has a large number of implications. Why? Well, I think because there's ambiguity on female migration. If on the one hand, it gives women greater freedom, no? They're taking charge of their lives, they are leaving behind extreme oppressive cultures, war scenarios, like Thien-Nhien has just said, among other situations. On the other hand, women, they become vulnerable to various serious situations, such as poverty, human trafficking, sexual exploitation, forced prostitution, and many other kinds of abuse. And well, the second aspect that I'd like to brief is that this phenomenon of the feminization, so the women started migrating, it promotes reinforcement of the sexual division of labor. It reinforces gender roles. And why? It's because when women in more developed countries, they go to work while they're gaining space in the job market and they're gaining financial independence and building their careers, there's no redistribution of the domestic tasks and children's care within their homes. Now, on the contrary, the women who go into the job market, they are burdened with 2 working days inside and outside their homes. And often the way that they get out of this situation is to hire immigrant women from developing countries to take on the tasks of cleaning, cooking, and caring so they can go to work. And in other words, task is like taking care of children and housekeeping. They are not being better divided between men and women. On the contrary, what we're seeing is a transfer from one woman to another woman. So that's where I say, in other words, female migration promotes the reinforcement of the gender roles in a global scale. So it's what's called the care chain. Well, and the last thing I'd like to mention is that today, due to technological advances and cost reductions, both in transport and communication systems, migrating no longer means a cut. Now, it's no longer about leaving one country behind and starting from zero in another one. Today, we are the so-called transnational migrants. And this means that we start our lives in another country, but we keep in touch with our country of origin, now with our families, our friends, our communities, and our culture. So we become a bridge. We bring the culture of the country of origin to the country of destination. And we also bring a lot of information and customs back to the country of origin. So It's like really that we build this bridge among worlds. And well, nowadays, people who migrate, they usually go to places where they already have some contact. Now, if they can choose, of course, there are many situations where it's an extreme escape and there's no choice to choose it. But if they can choose, they go to places where they have some contact, some relative, a friend, or where there's a large community of immigrants from their country of origin. And why do they do this? It is to make the process easier. It's to have a support network. It's where we find help because we know when we are migrating, you are going to the unknown. And then if you have there someone who can help you, why not? And in that's when my own experience comes in. So now I'm going to talk about myself. Well, the reason why my family and I decided to leave Brazil, it was mainly criminality. Our family has experienced some, in plural, situations of violence. And by violence, I mean having a gun pointed at your head by a criminal. This happened twice to my husband, this happened to my father, this happened to my mother. And we were just afraid. It's not that Brazil is facing a war. It's not that it's an extreme situation, but it's very bad. It's very unsafe. And for the sake of our children and for quality of life, safety, freedom to walk on the street, we started looking for a destination. Germany was not our target per se, but we were looking for a country where we felt safe, where we could have our kids to play on the street and to be safe and to feel free. And that was when a job opportunity came up for my husband. Then here we came. We came to Germany. It happened, like I said, almost 9 years ago. And we had only 2 children at the time. And when we arrived here, when my kids started going to school, I first tried to enter the job market, continue my previous career, what I had done in Brazil. But I found it very difficult. I came up against many barriers that are so a part of an immigrant woman's life. It's prejudice, no, it's discrimination. It's discrimination against women, it's against immigrants, it's against mothers. There are several axes, no, it's intersectionality. And it was really harsh. I mean, I sent so many resumes and it was always a negative answer. And I knew I had experience, I knew I had a good resume, but I had no chance. I had just no chance. So somehow I convinced myself, well, it's not going to work. I'm not going to get it. So if I want to work, I have to accept something else. And I think that's something very, very bad for the self-esteem even, because you are convinced by the system, by the society, by the country, that you're not good enough. You're not good enough. You're always smaller. You're never going to be at the same level. And yeah, it's something that is part of the process. As I said, I think every migrant woman faces it, and it was very bad for me at the moment. I have known other women that have even achieved depression levels, anxiety levels, and there were panic attacks from all the situations. When you try, you know what you can, and there's always a no as an answer. Yeah, well, so at that moment, I also accepted that something else wouldn't work, and then I just accepted. I ended up taking a job far below my qualifications, So at least I could work. I worked on a relocation services office. It's a kind of office that helps families when they come abroad into the country, so they can find a house, a school for the kids, and all the bureaucracy. It's like holding hands from other immigrants when they're coming here, but mainly those are immigrants that are sent like expats. No, they're sent from big companies to Germany. So this service is hired for these families. Yeah, but I also suffered a lot of discrimination at work. Yeah, inside the office and with my colleagues, and I wasn't happy. So I decided to go for a new career path. I would then dedicate myself to helping other immigrant women who, like me, go daily through all these difficulties. And that's when the non-profit organization Aquarela Frauengruppe was founded. Aquarela means watercolors, and the name was chosen because we wanted to bring many colors together, no nationalities, races, diversity. That's what we wanted to bring together. And my work at Aquarela, Aquarela is now 3.5 years old. And we have since then been promoting integration. And by integration, we both mean integration to the German culture. No? So like, for example, we offer German courses and we offer a lot of workshops to important themes such as laws, what are the women rights in Germany, and how can a woman enter the job market here, how it is, where they should go to look for a job, what is necessary to have a certificate or a diploma acknowledgement. So it means all the integration to Germany itself, but it also means a social integration because we realize when women they arrive here and they don't know the language and they don't know anyone and they have no support, no support network. It's very dangerous for the women because they find themselves completely alone in an unknown situation. They don't know where to go. They don't know where to ask for help. So I think it's very important to put these women together so they get to know each other and they can help each other. There are some women that have been living here for a while now. They already know the language, they already know the system and bureaucracies, and they can hold hands with those who have just arrived. And especially for those who have kids, it's also very, very challenging when you have kids and you don't know how to go to the doctor because you don't speak the language. You cannot go to the school because you don't understand what they're saying. So it's very rich that women who have been through all the situation, they can help those who have just arrived. And we also offer projects related to women's well-being, such jogging group, yoga, Pilates, therapy groups, circles where we meet to talk about specific themes, because we believe that we understand that for a woman to feel fulfilled, she needs all aspects of her life to be balanced. So it's not only about integrating or not only about working, but it's all together. It has to work all together in a sense, no? As human beings, that's how things work for us, and that's the work I have been doing. I'm very, very happy about it. It's something that really makes me happy, and I also started studying more about it for 2 years now. I have been studying more about migration and about gender and diversity. I'm taking a master course in this theme because it's something that I really like, and I want to keep in this path right now, no? In this social environment, and this is my target from now on. Yeah. So our organization works in this transnational scenario, and our mission is to promote social change by helping these women to fight against so many different axes of oppression and discrimination. Yeah. Very rosary
Juliana,
mood.
yeah, Juliana, I was like watching, others, Thien-Nhien, and I see her heart here from Hannah. And, I just kept nodding because so much of your experience resonated. I mean, just going to a country, settling, dealing with discrimination, getting the feeling and the message that you're not enough because of different things. And sometimes, yeah. So thank you so much for sharing. And I love all of the facts that you have shared. It just enriches the program and really gives it a different dimension. Thank you so much. I realize that we've had wonderful stories. We have one more. Immigration has so many facets, and it's fascinating how much people do not sort of like embrace, understand, and embrace this complexity and everything that it brings. Leslye, I feel like teasing you and say, Dr. Obiora.
Leslye will do.
Leslye is an amazingly impressive woman who came from Nigeria, experienced war as a child, came not to escape war, but as actually to attend, I believe, Yale Law School. And so I know that we have, and this is such, I don't know, all of this has touched my heart, and I hope you can stay with us. It's an hour and 15 minutes. If you have a question or a comment, please, because I know that I'm trying to focus on the presentation and I just want to keep saying like, thank you. Yes, I know, I went through this. Yes, oh, amazing. So please, Leslye.
Thank you.
Share your story.
Thank you. I love the creed, a reminder that Emily always shares with us. We are all walking each other home. Just listening to Thien-Nhien and Juliana, just reaffirming the commonalities of our experiences and the human conditions that we have to contend with. As you've already mentioned, I actually entered this country. I was attracted to this country and given the opportunity to enter at from a very different angle. I came here in search of higher education. My people encouraged me to go in search of the so-called golden fleece, whatever that means. And I thought it was always going to be golden. But again, coming back to the metaphor of journey and walking, it's all about the journey and not the destination and what you learn along the way. And this is part of the richness that our experiences as immigrants bring to the table, listening to the people who've gone before me. Yes, indeed, I grew up having, my country had just emerged from colonialism and dealing with all the challenges of trying to build a nation state amidst that. And it came at very high costs. And 5 years into, I was born 3 years after independence from British subjugation. 5 years into that, we started having all sorts of dizzying experiences that threw us into a tailspin in a downward spiral. And 7 years after that, we went to war. So I was barely 3 years old when my country fought the first war of secession with my ethnic group, the Igbos, trying to secede from Nigeria because of injustices that they were experiencing. And of course, at the end of the war, the mantra was there were no victors, no vanquished. But of course, if you were a billionaire and you had money in Biafran currency, and all you had to get at the end of the war was the equivalent of 20 naira or $20 in Nigerian currency, you didn't need a rocket scientist to tell you who was the victor and who was vanquished, and whose worldview is the mainstay of your going forward. So shortly after that experience, I lost my dad, and growing up in a family of 6 girls and 3 boys, it was quite interesting to be imprinted the way I got imprinted. But most of it was really in my worldview. We believe that you are as good, that your God is as good as you allow him or her. So we believe very strongly in your agency as a human being. And most of my upbringing was trying to reinforce that message that the sky is your limit. In fact, my mother's oldest sister's name, it literally translates that into the sky is your limit. So whatever other constraints in life, gender, age, physical challenges, all that if you if you do your due diligence, you'll be able to transcend them. And that was the worldview that made me aspire to higher education and to come to the United States. And I applied to Yale Law School and got a fellowship, scholarship to come to Yale. Went from Yale to Stanford, started teaching, earned tenure at a relatively reasonable age. Was invited. My visa, my work permit was one that recognized me as an alien of extraordinary ability. And I remember several years later when I finally decided, okay, I'm going to become an American citizen, precisely because of what I was, what I had just experienced going back home. I was commended by the Homeland Security officers, commending me for finally stepping up to become American. And I say this to say that, we have these myths about, or these portraitures of who are deserving and who are not deserving. What they don't know is that we are all the same. It's just about the opportunities that you end up having. But part of entering the United States at that echelon really gave me a panoramic overview that led to a crisis of conscience along the lines of what Juliana was talking about. So you, in your own walk, you experience all these challenges of being an outsider, and then you look back home and you know that the conditions back home are not necessarily that auspicious for you to come back home. So you find yourself caught in the middle. You are very discouraged by what's going on at home as an African woman in the United States, very racist, dealing with racist ideologies and dealing with adverse circumstances and all of that stuff. And as a Christian, you then come to your God and you wonder, where the God is. Where is God in all of this? What's wrong with this picture? And you are reminded again, just like your indigenous worldview reminded you, that you are, in many aspects, your own God. God has given you what you need to improve the situation. So that courage, that conviction was really part of what built up my courage. And it took a lot of years. I came here when I was 23. It wasn't until my 40th birthday that I had this crisis of confidence and conscience that I was talking about. And that was the turning point for me. I had come here and there was so much negative narrative about my country, of course, most of it understandable given what was going on in the country. And that really alienated me from the country. So I came in 1987, went back home in 1990 to do the field research for my doctoral studies. And by the time I came back, I couldn't imagine having much to do with the country, given how much I had seen it fall apart. And at age 40, I just realized it was important for me to summon up the courage, to be part of the repairer of the breaches that I am sitting just critiquing. Why don't you run up your own sleeve? I mean, you've had a good life, So what's your point? What's your issue? You know, you're waiting for those who you think are racist to come and help you when God has given you all you need to be able to do what you need to do. And it was from that perspective that I came of age and really started thinking of how to tool up myself, you know, to be the bridge builder that I need to be. And part of it was my understanding of the crisis of the state in my country, how all the problems have to do with the leadership crisis that we're dealing with and with the co-optation of the state by, you know, upstarts, mainly who I consider upstarts. Many of them, you know, took up the space that those who left the country abdicated. So we were the one who empowered them to do what they are doing now, and we also have a responsibility to go back and figure out how to do what we need to do to figure out a better way forward for the country. So my role in this as an immigrant has been more of one of a participant observer, and it really my angle of vision always emphasizes the positive sides of immigration, as Thien-Nhien had reminded us. You know, the narratives always focuses on, you know, immigrants as liabilities. Juliana also points out that they're not just assets, you know, contributing to economies, but that they're also lifelines for the receiving countries or the destination countries, because they then, you know, draw from their own experiences to try to help facilitate the integration of those who are coming to the country of to their destination country. So when you look at the positive sides and when you look at what happens with the receiving states, you know, they focus on what they consider drains on maybe their economy. They think that the immigrants need support, but they lose sight of the fact that that diversity is actually a hub of creativity, as Thien-Nhien started off reminding us, you know, about Silicon Valley. If you look at the demographic profile of Silicon Valley, you don't need, again, a divination, you know, to persuade you that there is so much going on here that immigrants can bring to the table. And if you look at also the intangibles that make up the culture, that make up your country, the way that they enrich it is a lot of gain. That really, that trade-off between, you know, the whatever minimum support that you give to facilitate their transition into your society pales in light of all that you gain from them. And then when you go to the countries where they came from, the countries that send them, as I said, for them, actually, that's where the whole narrative of brain drain resonates, because most of those who leave are those who are able to leave, at least those who leave voluntarily, well, quasi-voluntarily, because it's not always voluntary. There's always a push factor that makes you then look to, you know, what's attracting you to the country as a pull factor, whether it's better education, whether it's better health, whether it's security. And in fact, when you look, going back to Juliana's point, at what happens where these countries now become, you know, plagued by criminality, that's not independent of what's going on in the global political economy. You know, when you look at the radicalization, when you look at the mobilization of the youth in a country like mine, where the youth, 14-year-olds and younger, I think about 60% of the country, you know, and they have no, you know, when they grow up, in fact, as they're growing up, what's their educational options? What are they learning? And then, you know, what percentage of them are unemployed? Over 60% of the youth are unemployed, and they have brilliant minds. And what do? They use it to become entrepreneurs in anti-social ways. They become, scammers on the internet, they carry guns, they whatever they need to do to, and I'm not trying to justify it in any way, but I'm also trying to set the stage for a conversation, a constructive dialogue about how we are all in this together as a global society. Whatever is happening in the North is contributing to the complexities that are fueling the migration trend from the global South. So if we have to be honest with ourselves, we really have to figure out how we can step up on international cooperation in a way that will make us realize the indivisibility of our security. It's not just about immigration. We've seen also with climate migration and all the factors that are compounding the immigration trend, that they all come back to this, that one way or the other, we have to rethink the paradigms that we're using for global governance and start thinking beyond the prerogatives of states to protect their, boundaries, to the imperative, for us, the urgency for us to look beyond. Everything is saying to us that the nationhood, the Westphalian paradigm has exhausted its usefulness, and why is it that we're still, that's beholden to it? So, in summoning up the courage of my convictions, I decided to just bite the bullet and figure out how to take baby steps to go back home and be part of the solution, and in laying the foundations and building the bridges for better futures. And when I went back home, I couldn't afford to go back to the center to the cities, because I thought those were dangerous, they were not safe, and those were the sources of my disillusionment. And I went back to my village of origin, which was pretty much, it still had a lot of what I romanticized and a lot of what I celebrated. And I started the Institute for Research on African Women, Children and Culture, which had a grassroots initiative to empower women and children. And we started giving microcredits and for the women in exchange for them to give us their time to build up their civil society capacity, give them education, literacy, numeracy, and a number of interventions that were akin to just meeting a threshold minimum of the human rights of the human rights that the government was not really doing much to work with. And from there, I guess I ended up, coming into view of those who were in authority, and ended up being appointed a minister of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. And my experience at that level also deepened my empathy for the country and enabled me to start other initiatives. And the latest that I'm dealing with at the moment is the School for the STEM education of the most underprivileged girls. And at the end of the day, quite frankly, it is so important for us to have these kinds of conversations that we're having, given that we live in a democracy, given that these democracies are increasingly being polarized, and that it is this polarization that is driving the kind of backlash that's actually, most of which is built on ignorance. And insofar as democracy is about dialogue and dissent, rather than flexing in the way of pivoting to the kind of extremism that is alienating us, perhaps, we can have more of these invaluable forums that can help us, sit down and have meaningful conversations on how to agree and how to disagree. And most times, all it takes, prejudice is mainly a function of ignorance. When you shine the light on it, they say, oh, but you're not like the others. What they don't know is that, the others are just like me. They've just not had the opportunity to engage in the way that we are engaging. So it is so important for us to continue this walk of walking each other home, this walk of building bridges in, at the micro level, at the macro level, in whatever institutions we find ourselves, from the basic unit of the society, the family, to, the ones at the intermediate level, at churches and at the state level and so on and so forth. And the struggle continues. Thank you.
My heart is so full, and I am Leslye. You took it home. I don't need to say anything. You've said it all. The need for us to stop using outdated concepts, remains of colonization, to realize that we need to build a more global community and to address this polarization and continue to sort of like work together to see if we can build a better world as opposed to one that is sort of like divided and growingly unequal. There are so many nuances to everything that all of you have shared. I'm so grateful. I am so grateful. These are the kinds of conversations that need to happen. And they could not happen without people like you with so much lived experience and willing to share your journey. Sometimes we live bad experiences and enlighten all of us and make us understand the human quality and the compassion that we need to have in everything that we do. Thank you. We have come to the end. I am not sure if anybody has a comment or a question. I want to try to be respectful of time, even though this has filled my heart and my head and my soul and fed my soul and my mind so much that I am floating. And I hope that you join our community, because this is the type of conversation that we want to have. And we hope to expand, tell people about us and what we do, and look at other conversation. We'll be sharing the recording, because these are the nuances and complexity, complex issues and the complexity that we need to embrace. Nothing is simple. Nothing is black and white. In order to deal with the problems that we're facing now, we must embrace the complexity of the issues that we face. Thank you. Emily, did you want to say a last word?
Like you said, there's nothing else to add, really. Leslye, you brought it home, all of you, your stories, just the granularity of them, and the themes that ran through all of them. We could just all sit here for hours and listen to you talk. And it does make me just really appreciate the collective force of women around the world, as so many are roaming the planet, and many of us trying to be a welcoming city. But women are, we are holding more than half the sky to heal our world and to welcome the human family wherever we find ourselves. So just want to say we are with you, and if I could just maybe close in a word of prayer. May we all experience God's peace like a river wherever we are wandering this day, and may we know her nurturing love as she holds us on her knee and dandles us at her, and cuddles us at her breast. May we go in peace. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.